Hi, everyone. Welcome. The next talk is going to be about AI, about pivoting a company that's a working company, taking risk. So please join me in welcoming Jonathan. Jonathan is the founder of Athena. That's a human plus machine assistant. In 4 years, Jonathan really bootstrapped Athena to about 2,000 employees, 50 million ARR. And he's going to talk about making big changes at a company that's actually working and what that's like. All right, thank you.
Awesome. Excited to be here. Good morning, everybody.
So let's start from the beginning. So introduce Athena a little bit. So what is it really? What does it do? How does it work behind the scenes?
So Athena is a human plus AI assistant. And our clients pay $3,000 a month for a full-time human assistant based out of the Philippines or Kenya that works just dedicated to you. And our assistant started fully human and will become increasingly machine-powered over time. And the way it works is you have a human on top, that's the UX, but that human is powered by dozens of machine models doing pieces of the work. But because there's a human on top, the project always gets to the finish line.
Okay, and just illustrate a little bit kind of the scale of the company. So how many interactions are there, or how many customers do you serve, and so on?
So we started 4 years ago, and we've scaled the business to 2,000 full-time employees. Business is growing 100% year over year, cash flow positive. On the EA side, we vet more than 1,000 human assistants per day, so 30,000 per month. We have a huge fire hose of talent that goes through a whole battery of assessments, projects, and then live human interviews. And then on the client side, we've got over 1,000 clients. And we've been fortunate to have some nice promoters. Some of you probably listened to All In, and you heard Jake Howell talk about us this weekend. He's sent us just a deluge of candidates. So our growth teams are all celebrating. Our operations teams are like crying and having nightmares. The demand is easier in this business than it is for others I've been part of, but meeting that demand with all the supply is going to be really hard. We have to hire effectively 1,000 people over the next number of months to meet all that demand.
So you have a clearly working company. You have clearly product market fit. It is scaling. Even from the financials, my partner David is happy about the company. This is like a very unusual, fortunate situation. So why do you want to blow all of this up and basically do like the hard pivot into AI? That seems wrong.
So in my last business, Thumbtack, we raised a lot of capital. And with Athena, my first vision for the business was I'll bootstrap this, not have any investors, and have this nice cash flow business. And that was going according to plan. And then a friend who was working at OpenAI in the summer of 2022 sent me some examples of what GPT-4 was capable of. He was red teaming the model in the early days. And my first reaction was honestly fear, because I was like, man, we have this amazing business. There's no channel risk. It felt like we were, there's nothing that could hurt us. But this was clearly the first threat that could really steamroll the business. Mm-hmm. And so, I jumped in. I learned a lot about AI. I hired a machine learning PhD student to help teach me over a course of 6 months to really go deep on like where the models were, where the scaling laws were taking us. And the fear over time turned to, honestly, just excitement about how much this could power our business, this could be a much bigger business than we first realized. It could also just be like a much more fun and cool business. And so, playing defense is no fun. And so we said, let's break the seal, raise capital from Khosla, and go all in on AI.
Cool. There's kind of a going theme here when we do AI investments, which is the sort of idea of becoming roadkill of the base models, where you innovate just not quite enough, and it just becomes base capability of the model. So really your business kind of evaporates. So some video generation businesses, for example, were like that, when then Sora comes out and then just disappears. Yep. So you started at fear, but let's talk about the opportunity. So what would it do to the business? What are your hopes that doubling down on AI does do to the business on financial metrics like margins and so on?
Yeah, so I mean, our margins are constrained now by the one-to-one match between a client and an assistant. And if we can double or triple the productivity of these assistants, which we think is possible, you can eventually break that one-to-one match, and your margins can go from 50s up to what look like true software margins. Yeah. But I'm actually less excited about the margin opportunity and more excited about creating a product that's otherwise impossible. And if you look in the executive assistant space, there's really two bets being made. You have old school human-only assistant businesses, which are effectively staffing companies. These won't exist a decade from today in their current form. And then you have modern machine-only assistant companies like OpenAI, which are obviously amazing, but they're only capable of a fraction of what a human can do today. And we think the opportunity is human-machine combination that ties both of those capabilities into one product. And so that means you get the best of human and the best of machine. And, in our kind of early proof of concepts we built, we can assign a task to an assistant, have a machine break it down into subtasks. Machines can do one or two of those subtasks, and then the humans can do the 8 or 9 others to take it to the finish line. And over time, you're going to see machines do more and more of that, and the humans go take on higher level and more complex and interesting work.
How do you think about the other side of it? Because you have, in your product, you also teach your customers on how to use assistants, like human assistants, actually effectively. So, for example, how to delegate appropriately, because lots of your customers might not know, like from the beginning. Is there a role for the AI, maybe not only to fulfill tasks, but also aid in basically training your customers to use the AI or AI-human combo more effectively?
Yeah, so the way Athena is differentiated today is this delegation coaching. And we work with CEOs and founders like the people in this room, and most people think they're good delegators, but we have this delegation assessment, shows you kind of what level delegator you are, and across 1,000 different clients, we've seen very clear delegation paths going from a novice delegator to someone who has true mastery and has enormous leverage. And seeing those different paths is this knowledge and expertise we have about delegation now. And so that delegation coaching that we do with our clients works, but it's human-driven. And so we asked ourselves, could we replace this human-driven delegation coaching with more machine-automated delegation? And so the first things we built have been in this direction. The very first experiment we ran a year ago was, what if we built a Zoom auto-delegator? So it listens to a Zoom call, transcribes it, runs it through LLMs to find potential delegations, and then instead of emailing you a list of tasks to do, it emails your assistant. And this is where the human-machine combination shines, because you look at these half dozen suggestions, the machine can do it instantly. A few of them are pretty obvious or not on the mark, but there's 1 or 2 that are amazing, and the human can take it to the finish line. And we've now run other auto-delegator experiments on email and on screen capture, and we see a very clear path to building a complete auto-delegator, which is a series of machines that follow you everywhere you work, identify potential delegations, things that you haven't vocalized, but that we know from past delegations and working with your EA, things that you would like to offload to your EA. And then your EA just gets a stream of potential delegations, which they triage, decide, yes, no, I want to work on it, and then work alongside the machines to get to the finish line.
What would you tell folks in the audience that are maybe running a non-AI business right now? They might hear this talk, they might be interested in really taking it seriously and maybe pivoting in that direction similar to you. Really, how to get started? What are the first things you should do? What are kind of some of the initial lessons? I know your journey isn't complete here, but some of the initial lessons that you learned, some of the pitfalls. What's good practical advice, like who to listen to, who to hire, what sort of size of experiments to try? What would be the lessons that you would give people on the way in this audience?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the first thing is you need to steep yourself in the frontier developments to a deep enough degree that you can see where they're going. We were talking about this before of it's moving so quickly that if you are just building to current frontier capabilities, you're going to be surprised by the next generation. And so you need to be able to see the vector of where things are going. So that's just educating yourself. And then the second thing I'd say is experimentation is so cheap. So it doesn't cost much to try things. Some of our early experiments were replit bounties. where we paid a couple $100s to some 15-year-old kid somewhere in the country to build a working demo for us. These models are so cheap. Zapier is so cheap. You can connect kind of all the dots without true engineering capabilities to build proof of concepts to show that things really work. And then when they do, you can go out and get the real engineering capabilities to make it scalable.
How do you think about teams? So there's obviously sort of two approaches where do I need to hire an AI researcher of like, a large pedigree and a long resume of research accomplishments, or is it more like a practitioner, or is it, so how do you think about like the types of people to hire here?
Yeah, we're focused on CTO is a generalist, team builder, moves quickly, and can get things built. And that CTO hires a head of AI who's more on the frontier, not necessarily a researcher, but is really in the frontier of all the developments, knows what things are working, is actually getting their hands dirty and building things. I think that combination is the right
Why
fit.
did you decide to split this up? There's basically two choices here, right? You could say, I have engineering or technical leadership, and it combines both the technical leadership and like AI awareness or knowledge, but you decided explicitly to split it up. There's like a CTO role and there's like let's call it an AI leadership role. What made you come to that conclusion?
It's just a full-time job to stay on the frontier, and you can't do it casual anymore. And it's also a full-time job to recruit and manage and execute against the team. Okay. And so I think it needs to be separated.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about moats. So you hinted at this a little bit. So we are going into a territory that also some of the large model providers do care about. GPT-4o demos, for example, show a very rapid interaction between users and the AI in almost an assistive sort of fashion. So how do you not become roadkill of the large models?
It's a great question. We see a few different things. One is the data moat. So having to build these assistants, having all the data from Outlook, all the email correspondence, not enough. Having all the Chrome browser data is not enough. You need to be able to follow a task as it's completed by assistant across often a dozen different applications. In order to get all the reason you need to do that is so that you can actually see it happening from end to end. And the way to get all that data is to employ and own the computers of thousands of human assistants so you can actually watch it. So we are just fortunate, and we're lucky in this regard to be sitting on this data asset. And then the second thing is we're going to build deep workflows on the assistant side. These are workflows that these big tech companies aren't going to build because they're niche. And for the first workflow on the assistant side is probably going to be a machine that watches them work, pulls out tasks as they're working on them, puts them on a task list to identify this task is done, in progress, to be done. That creates a source of truth of the task being done. Once that source of truth is created, you can unbundle tasks into subtasks. And once you do that, you can assign subtasks to machine agents. These workflows where you manage your tasks, that sort of thing, something OpenAI is not going to do. And then the third thing, I think, is this delegation training. Yeah. If you have a great EA, if you're inside a company, there'll be a great EA, and there'll be one executive who gets enormous leverage from that person and other executives who don't. And the difference is not the EA, it's your ability to delegate and to get personal leverage. And the same is true of machine agents. You can have a machine agent that's as good as a human, but if you don't know how to delegate, if you don't have the creativity or the skills, then you don't get that leverage. And so that's a place we'll continue going deep.
Okay. As you embark on all these changes, you have a working business, like an exceptionally well working business, as we talked about earlier. So how do you make certain you do not destroy the customer experience if you inject more AI experiments that can have a larger beta and maybe occasionally it doesn't work quite well? So how do you do expectation settings with customers? How do you ensure quality of the final product here in the end, while injecting, hopefully at some reasonable speed, more and more AI features?
So, the biggest expectation setting we have to deal with is clients want more of this, and it's going to take us a while for it to really roll out and impact them in a meaningful way. Because the human is on top, lots of our early experiments, the clients don't even see it. It's the the assistant's just a little better, a little more accurate, saving a little time. And so lots of our experiments are coming from the bottom up, where it's all behind the human UX.
Eventually, I might not even notice, really.
Our goal is for, Sam yesterday talked about getting away from this like GPT-4 to GPT-5 model, and things just slowly and gradually get better every day. That's our vision, is that your EA just gets better and faster and more capable, every month, forever. Okay. And eventually we may launch more consumer-facing experiences that will be more disruptive. But for now, the human UX is very powerful. We've evolved to like humans, and you put machines behind them, it makes it a powerful combo.
What are you worried about that could go wrong in this journey?
I mean, data privacy is really big. An assistant is already in a position of trust. You have access to email, calendar, passwords, sometimes bank account information, very private, personal information. So that's a position of trust we have to honor. That's always been the case. But now if you have ubiquitous tracking on the EA's computer, that just ramps things up an order of magnitude. So that's something we're going to have to invest heavily in and treat very carefully. And then the second is these, general models are moving very quickly. And, we were talking before this, we feel like we have kind of a 5-year window to build real data moat, real workflow into these organizations so that we don't become roadkill.
So what mistakes do you think you have made in embarking on this journey? So what are kind of the anti-lessons, maybe things to avoid?
So we've run lots of experiments, and not everything works, but it's surprising how most things do work. We understand the capabilities, so we don't try things that are too far outside of the capabilities. But in our experience, if something doesn't work now, we come back and we try it a few months later, and the model's getting a little closer and closer. So, for us, it's just like, I wish we'd started earlier. But now that we're going, it's just got to move as fast as we can.
Okay. On this journey, what are the things that the board and your investors can help you with, or what have you experienced about like being helpful in that sort of regard? What should folks maybe ask from their investors to help with this journey?
Yeah, I mean, I've been speaking to you about how to structure the team. Eric Johnson here has been helping us recruit CTOs. He's been amazingly helpful interviewing. For me, it's just team building and introductions. And we have the ideas, we have the capital, we are human constrained, and so leveraging your guys' networks.
So go and get the help hiring. that is probably the biggest lesson here. What are you most excited about in the near future, and how do you think the system is going to look when we speak like in 2-3 years, where hopefully you're a public company and massively successful? What are you most excited about? How do you think the product is actually going to work then?
Yeah, so we have 1,000 plus CEOs today, and I would say 50 of them are master delegators who achieve just incredible leverage. They're able to scale their company, and they get actually so much leverage that we call it time abundance. You talk about time scarcity, but when you become really master level at delegating, you have this sense of abundance where I can now take on new projects. This is a very difficult level of delegation to get to, and very few of our clients get there. And when they do, it takes a while and lots of coaching. I think there is a path with these machine automated delegation where you have a series of machines follow you around, and effectively a delegation coach who is sitting at your computer with you constantly. They could accelerate that from, a small portion of our clients to maybe even the majority. And for me, that was my motivation with Athena. Is I've always just wanted more out of life. Like, life's short. I want to have 100 lifetimes, start 100 companies, have 1,000 friends, but we don't have much time, and we haven't cheated death yet. But delegation and personal leverage is like the one way I found that I can get more out of life, and being able to give that to a lot more people will be really cool.
I really like this idea of like time abundance and actually carefully measuring it. It's like a good symbol of quality or a metric of quality and like how well the assistant process actually works. I think it's a great idea. So maybe since like lots of people are thinking about these problems, let's open it up for questions. So who here has some questions for Jonathan?
So a simple one. How do you deal with the time zone changes between, let's say, West Coast and Philippines? And I'd want an assistant to be available right away during my working hours, of course.
Yeah, we just have clients pick that working hours they want, and then the assistant works those hours. So in the Philippines, they'll work overnight if that's your time preference. If you've ever been to Manila, if you go out at 5 in the morning, it's happy hour because that's when most people get off work. So there's a whole culture around kind of people flipping their clocks. There's basically a whole subculture of people whose whole families, all their friends are working overnight, and their schedule's just all built around it.
Thanks for the great talk. I have a question. I was previously at Google. We tried to do this with the Google Assistant. We even call it the one personal assistant. And we've always refused to bridge the gap between tech and the end result with humans because it seemed ultra hard. I had a lot of friends who ran like Zirtual and all these other things. I'm a fan of the business because I'm a consumer of it. So what are the things that you guys are able to do that other people can't do? Usually it's like hiring, recruiting, retention, quality control. And on either side, are there any hard truths that you've learned where some things that you guys understand that none of these other previous companies have understood?
Yeah, on the operations side, the short answer is I have a co-founder who's a maniac operator. I had built a 1,000-person team at Thumbtack in the Philippines. That's how I first got acquainted with this market. And when Athena started growing, it quickly became obvious we were going to need to hire not 1,000 people, but like tens of thousands, maybe 100,000. And so I went and asked my friends for the best operator in this space and brought in a co-founder who had scaled his last company to 25,000 people in the Philippines, hiring 1,000 a month. It has seen enormous scale. And when you look at why he's able to do what he's able to do, it's not that he has any secret power. He's just better at all the different things that you're supposed to do. He digs in with the team better. He pushes people harder. He's more aggressive, and he's done it before. So, he's our secret weapon, effectively, of just like world-class, hardcore operations. And then, what was the second part of your question? Lessons learned? Oh, one of the obvious hard truths is scaling a human business is hard. It's like, the growth teams is genuinely celebrating all this ARR that's coming from JCal, but we're not a SaaS product today. We can't hire 1,000 people in a week. Give us a few months, we can, but in a week we can't. And so that creates very jarring things in the business. And, in terms of one of the things I'm worried about as we scale the business is we have to be very nimble and move very fast on the technology side because we're effectively a seed stage company, but we have 2,000 employees now and we're going to have 3,000 by the end of the year. We can't let that huge human organization create a bureaucracy that slows down the technology development, but that's something naturally that could happen that we have to make sure it doesn't.
There's maybe room for one more question. Go for it.
I'd imagine that as your AI gets better, the assistants can be interchangeable in terms of how they can support different people. Do you see any bottleneck there in what the other side, like the one who's hiring these agents, wouldn't want to swap the assistants, or how do you see that evolving?
We think the one-to-one match is really powerful. If you've had an EA and gotten leverage before, it's typically because you stayed with the same EA for a decade plus. If you're changing your EA every couple of years, there's almost no chance you will become an elite master level delegator. I think there is some AI future where that becomes more possible a decade from now, where AI can truly ingest everything about you, have perfect memory. But for the decade ahead, we're focused on this one-to-one match because that assistant knows you, the relationship compounds over time, gets better and better.
Great. Well, join me in thanking Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you.